We don't really question it, so that's really interesting. Some of them seem to get it. I'll pick up sometimes things that aren't so obvious. If we ignore this is a big deal. Animal communication. Yeah, it's really fascinating. I'm the puppet. Animal communication. And I want to talk about how that can help with PTSD and grief. Scientific studies are beginning to show how animal communication works. But they're doing studies on telepathy. They're beginning to see things on MRIs. There's also studies or evidence from field studies. So Jane Goodall, most people have heard of her. She recounted how a young chimpanzee in Tanzania, his name was Flint, he actually died from grief weeks after the death of his mother, Flo. In Kenya, also Cynthia Moss reported that elephants attend to dying friends and family members and stroke the bones of deceased relatives. Dr. Mary Frances O'Connor, she spoke about in our last interview, the voles study about bonding, how they react when they're separated. It's like a grief response. And also the Rothschild Giraffe Project, which also took place in Kenya. There was a baby giraffe born with a deformed foot. A mother giraffe wouldn't go more than 20 meters away from this baby giraffe. And unfortunately, the giraffe actually did die, and many of the females in the herd changed their behavior significantly in the wake of the infant's death. There are a lot of videos out there you can find about with grief-like behavior with dolphins and whales. In addition to that, there's this, everyone's heard of this movie, Hachi. This professor died suddenly in his university office, and his dog used to come with him to the train, and he would walk him to the train, and then he would wait for him when he was coming home on the train at the train station. And he would go back there and just waited for him until the dog actually passed. So the sad thing about that is that the dog didn't seem to get it, that he wasn't coming back. And this is where animal communication could come into play, because we can help animals understand what's happened better. Some of them seem to get it more than others, more easily than others. And Barbara J. King is a professor of anthropology at College of William and Mary, and her studies of monkeys and apes have led to her examine emotion and intelligence in a wide range of animal species. And she definitely believes that from her studies, the animal who loves will suffer in some visible way. And this is the quintessential marker of grief in animals. So what we can do is we can, in addition to communicating with them, and talk more about that, but maintain a regular routine and exercise regime, give them toys to play with, anything that's going to bring joy back into their life. Spending time together, and it might be more than usual. Playing with them, cuddling, massage, and again, sometimes in more severe cases, they may help with traditional, non-traditional medical interventions. Just because they weren't maybe with another animal or human for a long time, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not going to be having a big impact on their lives. So we want to keep that in mind and not discount how long they had a housemate, perhaps. And potentially, if we ignore this is a big deal, because a lot of animals do suffer, especially because animals, we care so much about them. We try to help them to live long lives. And so they are at some point potentially going to experience the loss of another that they love. In an article called How to Heal an Emotionally Traumatized Pet on the PetMD website, Dr. Frank McMillan, a research veterinarian and director of well-being studies at Best Friends Animal Society in Kanab, Utah, states that a traumatized animal is at a higher likelihood of becoming re-traumatized if she re-encounters major stressors. So understanding their triggers is beneficial in helping to prevent episodes. Sometimes we do know what the trigger is. We can see very easily that it has something to do with like the weather, but they may be having a reaction and we can't figure out what's going on exactly. For instance, I work with people who often will tell me, well, they act fine sometimes when they go on a walk, and then other times they're having these reactions. We may not really know for sure what's going on. So that's where animal communication can come in, because we can understand and connect with the animal through animal communication, which is being able to feel what an animal's feeling. It is sometimes being able to do different senses. So pick up on how the animal's feeling through different senses. So those can be anything from visual, auditory. So that's more like having a sentence go through your mind, or words that you know, because you're connecting with the animal, you know that it's coming from them. It can be feeling something on your body, like a harmed part of the body, some injury that maybe people sometimes don't always understand or clearly become aware that there's something wrong. Like I'll pick up sometimes things that aren't so obvious. It's being able to feel something on your body sometimes. It can be smelling something that could be a trigger for an animal that they associate with a traumatic event. It could be a taste that they associate with a traumatic event or loss. It could be just a knowing. So those are all the different ways that telepathic animal communication can come through. Sometimes people can't figure out why training isn't working, and that's where animal communication can be helpful as well, is to understand, well, what is going on here? What are you feeling? What are you experiencing? So that we can better help you and figure out a plan that will work. So like I mentioned, scientific studies are pointing to certain areas of the brain that are providing tangible evidence via MRIs of how telepathy works. And this is through mirror neurons and magnetic fields of the brain. So this is posted in the National Library of Medicine, National Center for Biotechnology Information, and the article is Brain-to-Brain Communication, the possible role of brain electromagnetic fields as a potential hypothesis. This is a very in-depth article. I'm just going to give you kind of a very general summary of what we're seeing in this picture. So these are the two brains. You can see how the information is transferring through the firing of neurons and this magnetic field. And it's being picked up on by the other brain. And you can see they have these steps that are showing like how this process is happening. There's some kind of receiving going on of the magnetic field. And they are saying that this should be examined in its potential role in direct brain-to-brain communication, so telepathic. And they have to do more research on this, but the present study suggests it is possible that extremely weak magnetic fields of the animal's brain could transmit vital and accurate information to another animal's brain. They also say a previous study revealed involvement of the hippocampal region in telepathy. These findings raise the question of whether the subconscious regions of the brain play the central role in telepathy. So I'll definitely put that link in the description if you want to really go in deep and read this article. Hopefully more and more is going to come out to try to help explain how telepathy works. Of course, those of us who practice animal communication have been doing this for a long time. We don't really question it. It's really neat to better understand maybe actually physically what's happening. We know from experience that animals are sentient beings. We know that we can pick up on what they're feeling, what they're thinking, what they're experiencing. We can relay that information to them. That's why I started doing this channel. In part was to do things like live animal communication so that people who aren't so familiar with it can actually see it happen, and have people call in here who are just cold calling, who I've never met before and haven't really even spoken to many of them. A lot of people in the past haven't necessarily even let me know they're coming in, or I tell people just to send me, if they do contact me, I had just a picture and a very brief question, just to demonstrate how this works, that it's real. So I do encourage, if you have questions, you can always post them in the comments. And then also, if you want to try animal communication just with my free downloadable guided meditation, this is free on my website, intuitivetouchanimalcare.com. You can download it and start practicing. And of course, I also have a school for animal communication. It's Animal Intuitive Academy, and you can find that on my website. And you can either sign up for live classes, private classes, and I have a downloadable class for animal communication, acupressure, for you and your pets, and mindfulness. If this was helpful, also, I was forget to say, hit the like button, subscribe, and the notification bell. Try to be here every Thursday. Take care, everybody, and God bless.
Rub up belly.